All right, well, let's build this out. I'm going to cheat. I have a handful of electronics that's already put together. So I'm going to just cheat and put it into this frame as opposed to soldering it all up. We'll see how the frame goes together. I have cleaned the machining dust off the outside with a paper towel. If you see that these boards are a little wet, that's why. And I also, in true keeping with my personality, have not read any instructions, and I'm just going to assume that I can put this together by thinking about how it should go together, but there's a small chance that that will mean I'll make some stupid mistake that will make me look dumb, in which case I hope you all make fun of me. Okay, so we'll start with the bottom plate, and as I noted before, this is a little bit stretched compared to the QAV-R, and I had the QAV-RXL broke. Since we've got an extra bottom plate, I think I'm going to go ahead and install it. The two bottom plates together are 35 grams. And that means one of them, there's 18 grams. So 18 grams, I don't know. That's not nothing. Oh well, I think I'm going to put it on there though. So we've got a pack of these short screws, which... Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, so the short ones are motor screws, and it's nice that they give you those because the screws that come with your motors are probably designed for 3mm arms, because that's what most copters have. So the 4mm arms on this frame, the screws may not work, and so it's good that you got your own screws here provided by FPV model. By the way, one of the things I do notice about this is that this is a little thin here. It probably isn't going to matter. 4mm arm's pretty tough, but I certainly could see this arm being a little bit more prone to breaking here. Whereas if you compare it to the QAV-R, you can see that there's much more material here compared. Yeah, much more material there. And by the way, I hate, I keep comparing this to the QAV-R, but and I don't mean to be unfair, but at the same time, it's really obvious who a lot of the, shall we say, design influences came from. So yeah, let's not beat around the bush, okay? So we've got some spacers, and what I will do is, are they spacers? Oh, they're threaded. Oh, lovely. Oh, lovely, they're threaded. Well, that's even better. I'm really pleased about that. That's very nice. And is that going to work? Yeah, perfect. Those are 4mm spacers, millimeter spacers. And that can't be the right screw because I'm really not thrilled about how much thread that would leave on a spacer or on a standoff. It's not very many threads. Am I using the wrong screw? Oh, I may be using the wrong screw. Hold on. Okay, yeah, so those two packs of screws, the longer screws, were not the same length as you can see here. So the longer screws are what I'm supposed to be using here. All right, I've got all these screws in, and again, I love the fact that these are threaded. Number one, I love that they're threaded just because it holds these screws in while I'm working with the bottom plate, which is terribly convenient. And I also love that they're threaded because it's going to add some strength and rigidity to the copter, and that's always a good thing. So let's just go ahead and tighten those down. And this plate appears to be symmetrical, which is always nice, because it means you can't put it on wrong, so that's nice. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put that plate on, and I'm going to install some standoffs just to hold it on. Now the arms this. I believe that's correct. There's a short side and a long side. The short sides go vertical and the long sides go horizontal. And let's just check. You really can't do it the other way, because then the X is taller than it is wide, and also we shouldn't really be able to line up the screw holes the wrong way. Yeah, see, the screw holes prevent you. We've got these two screw holes running this way, and you see they align there, but if you've got this backwards, these are vertical and it won't work. I did have it correct. Okay, great. I'm going to line up that hole, and I'm guessing this is what the middle-sized screws are for. Let's just make sure I don't mix up my piles of screws. Okay. And that's in. I'm then going to take this piece. I don't think it matters which side is up. Take that down. You know, I gotta tell you, I'm going to use a longer screw there too, because, yeah, you can see it's not quite going all the way through. I'm going to use the longer screws, the same ones I used on the standoffs, here in the center. And that's going to give plenty of thread here to catch. Yeah, see, that goes all the way flush. That's good. I'll keep using the long screws. And on these ones, you're going to install it with the tall part to the inside, because that's what your flight controller is going to stand on. By the way, yeah, I can't. Yeah. There we go. So you don't have quite enough room to make it all the way around there. So you're going to need to come from the underside and screw it in. No big deal. Long screw. So you can see how these arms go in. And now all of the other arms are going to go together the exact same way. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll show you the result when I'm done. Alright, so the bottom of the copter is together, and I was correct. It's the long screws that are used for the standoffs and for all of the arms. So these middling sized screws, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe the middling sized screws, oh, that would make sense. The middling sized screws, maybe they are for if you choose not to double up the bottom plate. Are they the right length for that? I don't know. And I'm sure you can figure it out. The other thing I wanted to say is if you're putting this all together, it may go without saying, but I'll mention it. Put this together loosely, but then tighten it all down once it's all together, because if you tighten them down one by one as you go, getting the last one is going to be tricky. Alright, that's gone together. The next thing I'm going to do is, I guess I'm going to install the motors. Let's see, that seems right. And here the short screws are the ones we're going to use. Here's a quick tip for you as you're installing motors. Make sure, you see the C-clip in there? And you see how when I turn the shaft, the C-clip rotates with the shaft. That is how it needs to be. You do not want the shaft to be rotating and the C-clip to be stationary. The reason for that is that the C-clip will very quickly wear away, and so the C-clip will come off or get loose and stop working. So if your motor is slightly off center when you install it, the C-clip may rub against the edge of the arm and not turn. So make sure you center your motor such that the C-clip is able to rotate freely. Okay? Okay, so now I've tightened this motor down a little bit, and you can see that as I turn it, the C-clip is stuck. Oh, now it's moving. Now watch. It's rubbing right there. I don't love that. And if we compare this to the QAVR, notice the difference in the size of that hole and the cutout. It's much bigger on the QAVR. And that gives a lot more room for that C-clip to have relief and to not bind against the edge there. So be real careful about that. I might almost say that you want to ream that out a little more, but I'm not sure I would want to take too much material away from the motor screws. So I don't know about that. Alright guys, well what I ultimately did in order to make sure that it was centered and not rubbing was put all 4 screws in loosely, snug one of the screws down just barely so the motor would stay in place, and then turn it by hand and just let the C-clip sort of push itself into the center where it wanted to be, and then tighten everything down, and now it's fine. But there's not a lot of margin here to avoid that, and that if I had some feedback to give, I would say that if these holes could be reamed just even, a 1/2 millimeter larger, I think it would make a lot of difference and a lot of ease in getting these motors in without creating any issue. Let me just take a measurement here with my handy-dandy manual caliper, and we're at 7 millimeters there, maybe 6.5. And here on the QAV, we're at 8 millimeters, I would say, dead on. So it looks like there's another millimeter there on the QAV, and it does make a difference in getting the motor installed without that C-clip rubbing. That's the kind of thing that you would not pay attention to if you didn't know to look for it. Your C-clip would get stuck, your motor would spin, the C-clip would wear out, and then one day while you're flying, the bell would just go flying off. Alright, so I've decided that actually I should probably, since this is all pre-wired anyway, I should probably go ahead and install the flight controller before I put those other 2 motors in so I can get at everything. Now this is something that I did myself on my copter, because here I've got a bunch of nylon washers, but actually very, very thoughtfully FPV model has included a pack of 4 nylon washers, and I think this is a good idea. You really want to put nylon washers here on this metal brackets between your flight controller or your PDB and that, because you never know if something might make some contact, and so you definitely want to prevent that possibility. There you go. So we've got the washer and the standoff. And I'm going to do the other 4 just like that. If you don't have a set of hemostats, they are super useful for scenarios like this, except when you drop things. Okay. And now I'll go ahead and do the last 2 motors, I think, and then we'll put the flight controller on. and we'll be just about ready. And we're back. So I've got the motors mounted, I've got the ESCs taped down. I normally zip tie the ESCs, but I'm out of the little tiny zip ties, so I just use some tape. The frame comes with these small plastic screws, and I'm also going to go ahead and put another spacer on here, just because I feel like the flight controller could use a little bit of extra spacing, just like an extra 0.5 millimeter from the RROSD. And the reason for that has to do with the pins. These edge launch pins, they're very low profile, but they don't give you a lot of room to work with right here. Where I'm going to plug the camera in eventually. Hemostat to the rescue. I know this is kind of silly, but I actually feel like a flathead grips these nylon screws better than a Phillips. I feel like the Phillips really slips and the flathead really digs in and bites. So I always use a flathead to finish tightening them down, because I always strip them when I use a Phillips. So there we go. And you can see what I'm talking about here with the pins. There's not a lot of spacing here, especially if this wire is in the way, which I like to tuck the wires underneath here so that they're sort of out of the way and retain. So just a little extra space there makes me feel good. And there we go. We're coming together now. I'll go ahead at this point and put the rest of the spacers on. Looking very good. Very good. Alright, now the camera mount. And we'll go ahead and put the top plate on just for the time being. Oh, and fortunately, I always keep one of these around for just such an occasion. So the way this works is you just set the camera in here. Yeah, we got this drilled out, and the camera fits in there, and then that's how it mounts. It's just that simple. Now immediately I am noticing the difference in the machining here. You can see there's some play there, whereas on the QAV it is very snug. In fact, it's just almost the perfect amount of snug. But I'm going to give those points back if this goes into the top plate without any filing, because yes, okay, so points back. On the QAV, I had to file or sand the side plate a surprising amount to get it to go in, and I guess that's good if you're into that sort of thing, because it means it is super snug, but this one's pretty snug, and so the machining, the tolerances are really quite good. But this hole is a little big, and I really like the fact on the QAV that it is really just dead in place. I wonder if I'm intended to actually do it like this with the screw. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. Yeah, on the QAV it fits into the large hole and it fits just nice and snug. But I do wonder if I'm actually intended to use these holes here or this hole. It doesn't seem like that would be the intent, though. Let's see how it fits together. So this is a little bit of a tricky part, is getting this all together without it falling apart. And what I think I will do is I'll get the screws that came with the camera, and they have a wide head, and it shouldn't fit through here. Please don't fit through here. Okay, so that's, yeah, okay. Now in the 1177 camera, there's actually I'm guessing it's some kind of like a nylon or something, and it's the intent, I think, is that you can loosely screw in this screw and it'll retain it without you having to crank it down tight, so that the camera can still sort of move up, move up and down without working the screw loose. So it's like got a built-in nylock retainer. But the flip side is that getting it started is just an absolute pain in the butt, because it doesn't want to go in until you've already got it threaded. And if you come at it even, oh, I think I got it. Oh, second try, that's super nice. If you come at it even the littlest bit crooked, it just flips right off out of there. No. Alright, so I'm going to pause this and I'll be back. Okay, so I've got the screws in. Yay! And I just want to show you, this one's is basically all the way in, as tight as it will go. And you can see there's a little bit of play there. I don't know how much effect that will actually have when you're in flight. So let's put it together and see how it goes. Looking good. And then we'll take the top plate and put it on. And what I like to do, I'm going to use these short screws for the top plate, but I always like to put a longer screw, and since I've got some apparently spare ones that I didn't use, I always like to put a longer screw in the front at least, the front two, and possibly the back two, just because I feel it, there's so much stress there. You know, I've never, it may just be an overabundance of caution, but you never know. And then the other thing that's a little tricky is getting these lined up correctly. My cat is bumping my camera tripod. The other thing is getting these lined up correctly, these camera slots, and getting them all together at the same time is a little tricky. Actually, I don't want to use a long one there. Hang on. Getting them all together at the same time is tricky, so what I like to do is just put the front 4 screws in loosely, just until they start to feel snug. And then don't tighten them down any further. And then just pop these into place. Oh, have I gotten lucky? Oh my goodness. Yeah, so pop them into place so that then they're all, see, that one's not quite in right there, and there we go. Then finish snugging them down. So that way there's a little bit of pressure on there, and then when you pop them into place, they snap right into the slots and stay there. The screws sort of retain them. Whereas if you try to hold that all together, it's not going to happen. Now, yeah, see, so I'm probably not going to use this grommet anyway. I prefer to have retention on my power cord, and I don't consider this to be retention because you can see if I pull on it, it just pulls right through, right? And I do not want to be pulling on the OSD solder pads. So in fact, I'm going to put it this way sort of for the product shots, right? But in fact, I always would put a zip tie somewhere. Like, I would always zip tie this. I would never just rely on the grommet. That's just me. But there you go. It's now that it's together, there's some friction on that. Let's see if the camera wiggles. Yeah, so you can see the camera wiggles. So I would not want to fly like that. That's going to vibrate. That's going to produce visible vibrations. So we're going to need to retain that, and that's a real shame. I hope that if I brace against the top plate, as I prefer to do, maybe if I brace against the top plate, it'll help retain it enough that I don't get wiggles. I don't know. I'm not convinced about that, but we'll see. I do want to point out a difference here. It's on the QAVR, the side plate has 3 spots for the camera, and what that means is that you can change your amount of tilt. Now, my preference is to just brace against the top plate, right? That way I have something to brace against, the camera angle stays consistent, and it's a little hard to see with the black camera, but I have a zip tie running underneath it like a belt to hold it in place, okay? So what that means is that I have basically 3 choices of camera angle very easily by moving this screw back or forward one. So going back, it would make the angle shallower, maybe closer to like 25 degrees or 30 degrees. and going forward it would make it steeper, maybe like closer to 55 or 60 degrees. And I think that's a very, very clever design touch. And if I really wanted to, I could drill more holes, right? Notice these holes are smaller. I'm not sure if you can really see, but they're smaller than the ones on the FPV model frame, which means that the camera is very snugly retained. In fact, they're just the right size to fit the camera, and it almost doesn't want to go, and then it goes, and it's just perfectly snugly retained. Very nice touch. Now, FPV model have gotten this right. I do think that boxing in the front like this with an X is very smart and very desirable. And by the way, kudos to Soma and Alien frames, because I believe they were the first, certainly the first to mass produce a frame that had that design. If anybody knows of an earlier one, then they'll point it out in the comments and correct me, but I believe that's where that comes from. So, you know, Lumineer didn't use an X like this. They use a solid plate, and here's an X. But what it means is that we don't have the ability to move the camera forward or backwards. Now maybe there's something about these holes that I'm missing, but they're not really, the screw doesn't easily fit through there, so I don't think that's the intent of them. I'm not really sure. Maybe you could use this as a pilot hole and drill it out, perhaps. But if they were intended to mount the camera, then it seems like it would have been trivial to drill it out during milling and not leave that for the user to do. So I kind of feel like that's not the intended purpose of those. And that was the point in the evening when I realized that my brain was kind of turning to mush. It was like 2 in the morning. I just was kind of talking nonsense at some point. And so I've cut off the last like 3 or 4 minutes of this before I just sort of stopped recording and said, forget it, go to bed. But anyway, that's mostly all the stuff that was there for you to see. I've got another video coming up, which is a shorter sort of, final thoughts and overall impressions of this frame. But for those of you who watched the whole thing, this whole build out, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there was a lot of detail there that you were wanting. And keep your eyes open for my other video with final thoughts and overall impressions. As always, thanks for watching and happy flying.